Welcome back to the champion edition of Top Bins, one half of the Top Bin duos celebrating a fantastic league title. I'm your host, Matt, joined by my still love drunk, at least, but certainly much more sober now, Dom, Milan are champions of Italy. How are you feeling?
Speechless, man. I don't know. Words cannot describe how happy I am to see it finally happen after 11 years, man. So, I see you here representing as well.
Yes.
I appreciate that. So, and that's a Scudetto jersey as well. So it's respectable.
Yeah,
With
I think
the
this
with
is.
the Milan red badge, a la Project Evolution or Pro Evolution Soccer.
Yeah, I think this is what the 03 kit, I think. Like 03, 04, somewhere around there.
It's got the sublimated Milan on it across it.
Yeah,
That's
well,
I love
I mean, it's about as knockoff gets. Like worse than Philly parking lot after after a sports game type of knockoff. But it was $10, so I'll
we
take
take
it.
we take those wins, man.
We take those wins because Milan are champions. We'll take those wins as well. Before we start today, we got to thank the sponsors. Of course, this episode of Top Ends is brought to you by Bino Board. Bino is the next big tabletop game for your man cave / she shed. You think paper football meets foosball, and you've got Bino. Bino Board is a game and lifestyle brand based in Phoenix, Arizona. Their goal is to provide the highest quality boards and a true brand experience. Every part of their boards have been tested time and time again for the best possible playability so that every Flicker's experience is a positive one. You can bring the world together with Bino and hear someone's story from the other side of the pitch. You can go to binoboard.com right now. Use our code BINOUSP for 10% off your order, including the newly launched limited edition Ultraviolet board and Team USA and Team Mexico merch. We've got the World Cup coming up, of course. World Cup coming up in 2026 in North America as well. So, you can get in early on the Team USA, Team Mexico merch there. So that's code BINOUSP, BINHOUSP for 10% off your order at binoboard.com. We're going to start as we began the show talking about Milan, talking about the champions of Italy now. Like Dom said, breaking an 11-year drought. They did it in spectacular fashion as well, winning 3-0 to Sassuolo, a place that, again, we talked so much about the final three games, away to Hellas Verona, and then home for Atalanta, away to Sassuolo. All three clubs and all three venues that have provided, some trouble for Milan in the past. They passed the test each time, and Sassuolo was the final hurdle. They didn't even have to win. A draw would have sealed it, but they went out, stunned on him. Rafael, fantastic performance. Olivier Giroud. It's not the quantity of goals, it's the quality. And
Serial winner.
If you went just by weight of goals, he was fantastic this year
Yes.
because the goals he scored were meaningful. They were certainly game state changing. Same with Rafael. He really, I think, you said Mr. Scudetto for him, and I think that's very fair because he has been the difference, I think, with Milan. He scored or assisted in all the games in the run-in that they had to, and he was very often the main offensive producer. But yeah, it's a fantastic title win. They certainly weren't favorites coming into the season. I think there's probably 3 or 4 teams that people would have had above them.
Pretty sure they had the 5th best odds.
Yeah, so I think it's great. I think it's a great story. I think it's interesting because it's not I don't mean to diminish it already, but it's not a great team. Like there's no amazing players in this, especially with Serie A, especially with Milan too. We look at some of the old Milan teams and there's just tons of great players in there. Maybe some of these players can turn into great players, but this is a team that's I think interesting because it's one of these title winning clubs that I don't think it has a true star really even within this team. I think there are some very good players, but no one that you would say is one of the best in Europe at their position. I think the closest is Mike Maignan. But outside of that, I mean, it's just some very good young players that played exceptionally well when they had to.
Mm-hmm. The star on the team was a 40-year-old that didn't get any playing time come the end of the season. So
because he couldn't play because of his knee, which is
he
a very
literally
40-year-old problem to have.
The squad is interesting, right? You have some guys that have, backpacked it through the banter era as well, right? Kessie's on his last game with the club. He's in his last season. He's leaving. You've got other guys like Romagnoli, who unfortunately lost his captaincy and made his way to the bench. But you see all these guys that have been with the club, stuck with the club, and now it's culminated finally in a Scudetto trophy. Because you have that experience, some people that have been through some tough times. You have the experience of some people who have won big trophies in Ibra, in Magnan, in Giroud. So you got some guys that are kind of giving that mentality to the younger players, and a lot of these younger players that are hungry and want to win and want to succeed. So it was a beautiful thing. And you ain't lying. I thought Sassuolo was going to be the team to spoil it, man. I really did. That's a team that, not only Milan has set records, the fastest goal in Serie A ever was scored against them last year, but also a team that can go out and just absolutely bounce Milan. So seeing them be on top of it from the first minute forward was very, very easing to me of my nerves and whatnot. So, it was, like I said, it's been a long time coming. I've been through a lot. I've had to deal with a lot of people, saying every sort of negative thing about my club for maybe the last decade. I mean, I was even still getting it yesterday. I went to the Italian festival in Philly, down 9th Street. And as I'm walking down 9th Street, some people were saying like, "Oh, Milan shite," or, they're saying all this stuff. And I'm kind of just like walking around with this on my head, like, who won the trophy today? Who did that? But hey, listen, I can say as much banter as I want, but I'm going to leave that for maybe later on in the show.
Yeah. Well, Milan, this is one of the youngest squads to ever win the top flight in Italy, and it's the youngest since they instituted 3 points for a win. 25 years, 344 days, the average age of the squad. That's impressive to me, just especially when you consider that a lot of the now it's easy when you just say if you drop this player, it's even younger, but Ibra didn't play for half this season. Giroud was certainly a player that played a bit, but was not like a key integral part, starting week in and week out. Kier was injured for like most of the season. Those are your three oldest players, and they didn't really combine for all that much. Now, of course, that's the way every squad works. There's always older players, but when you think of like the impact players, it was a lot of young guys, and we'll talk about Arsenal a little later, in terms of like having a lot of youth. But I think when you consider just the difference, right now, some of the older players that I think are at Milan, like Ibra, right, like Giroud, have been in those situations where they've won titles. Especially Ibra has won so much in his career, and certainly has, I think, a lot of valuable kind of leadership skills and just experience to bring. And I think you've really seen that with this team. I think that's integral. For Pioli too, I think it's huge because this is a guy that, kind of took on the image of Milan, and that he really has been slighted a lot. And I have to admit, there were times where I think I doubted him as well. It really wasn't until the resumption of the season after the COVID break that Pioli actually kind of saved his job. Before, going into the COVID break, they were languishing, outside of the European spots and just didn't look great. But they went undefeated when they came back from the COVID break, and that ever since then they haven't looked back. They've just been such a great team, and you consider defensively too how just well structured this team was. Magnan certainly saved them when they had to. But I think when you consider you lost Kier for the season and Kalulu got converted to a center back, and yet they still played as good as they did and still had such a great defensive record down the stretch, because that's really what won it from Milan was the fantastic defensive efforts, which is, again, I think they're antithesis of a lot of what we think of when we think of like modern day European, top league champions, right? Where you kind of you want that experience. You usually need like a great goal scorer. This is a team that didn't really have a singular great goal scorer. Just barely breaking double digits. No one really fighting for like the top scorer race. Even not tons of assists. Like there's no great playmaker in this team, but it's very much like a sum of the parts. Really pulled it together. And there's some standout players, of course. I don't want to diminish that, but I just think again, outside of Magnan and Teo Hernandez. Tomori's come on a little bit, but those are like the two players that you would say are like top discussions in their position. Outside of that, there's Tomori isn't even getting calls to the England squad, which should change now. But like you think about that, it's just kind of insane. Rafa Leao is someone that is kind of on the fringes, but now I don't know how you don't have him in the discussion as one of the top attackers in Serie A, and
Hmm.
isn't pushing for that Portugal squad now. And yeah, I just think it's a huge success story for them. They deserve a lot of credit for the choices that they've made. Maldini, who I have on the back of my shirt, deserves a lot of credit for helping organize part of this team. Right, like I think from top down, when you just consider where this team was at and where they are now, it's very, very impressive. They deserve a lot of praise for their title win, and it got put into their hands, with that Inter drop against Bologna, and they didn't look back. They won every game, and they had a very challenging run in. Every time we looked at the schedule ahead for them, we had mentioned that this was certainly the harder of the two between them and Inter, and they won every game. That's what they had to do, and I think that deserves a lot of credit, a lot of praise. I think this is a title win that's probably even a little bit ahead of schedule for them. Even if you had asked them at the beginning of the season, just being in the top four would have been good enough, and just continually being in Champions League, but to win a Scudetto, I think is fantastic for Milan, and I'm very, very happy
Yeah.
with their progress this season.
I mean, when you look at it at the beginning of the season, people were saying Inter got stronger, Juventus got stronger, Roma got stronger, Lazio arguably got stronger.
The only one I
Napoli,
would push back on is Inter. I think people were very down on Inter after losing Conte, Lukaku, Hakimi, Eriksson. I think Inter's the only one on that list that people weren't really.
that's fair. I think that they did a decent job reloading.
That did
Uh,
not come apparent until like December, though. I think if you had asked
Fair.
people
That's
like
fair.
first game of the season, people would not have picked Inter as even Inter. Outside of this, were great, and looked like they were going to run away with the league until the
Yeah.
second half of the season. So, Inter, I think, deserves some credit for, when you consider what they lost, only being 7 points worse than last year. I think is actually pretty good, all
Yeah.
things considered.
When you think of the big Milan teams, right? You always end up naming more defenders than you can forwards, if you think about it, right? Just think about some of those great Milan players and some of those great Milan teams in the past. You're saying names like Maldini, you're saying names like Nesta, you're saying names like Baresi, uh, Dida, Zambrotta. You could say even going into the midfield a little bit and saying like Rijkaard and Vieira and Gattuso. And yes, you can name your attackers, right? You've got obviously like Ronaldinho, Ibrahimovic, Kaká, Van Basten, all these guys. But like whenever you think of Milan, it's always from the back first, right? It's always from the defensive end. And I think that Pioli really kind of embraced that kind of Milan identity and made sure that he was strong in the back. And if we didn't have, like you said, those playmakers, those go-to guys up top, well, what we're going to do is kind of make sure that we can get them on the counter, be strong defensively, get the ball forward, and just catch teams off guard. And you can see that plan didn't always work, throughout the season. I mean, even coming up to that last 5-game stretch, a couple games prior, Milan was struggling against smaller clubs. I think it was Genoa. I think where Milan was playing, it was either Genoa or Bologna, one of those clubs where they just couldn't get it done, and it either ended in a tie or Milan lost because they just couldn't get anything. Genoa kind of, or whoever the other team was, kind of limited Milan's chances to get on the counter, right? When you've got guys like Leao and even Salamakers, who does have a good work rate and some pace, to get down the sides and then get it back inside. I think it's very apparent, where Milan needs to put their money going forward. Build depth in the sections that you're already strong, but really go for some major marquee guys up top and in the center of the pitch. One thing that I do want to credit Pioli for in this last 5-game stretch was once he moved Krunic to the number 10, it seemed like everything started to settle a little bit, especially in the center of the field. Because Krunic isn't the guy that's going to make highlight plays, but he's going to do his job. He's going to press, and he gives that extra added, kind of like an advanced press player where he's going to win the ball. He's going to just work real hard in that offensive third to win the ball back when they lose possession. And he gets the ball. He's strong with the ball at his feet, and he just makes the right pass. He doesn't go too crazy. And I think that helped Milan create a lot more chances. I mean, he came in those last 3 games. They won 3-0, 2-1, and 3-0. So credit to Pioli for making that adjustment moving into the end of the season. I think that's something of an overlooked thing
Yeah.
that you may notice, but that really helped Milan secure this championship.
Yeah, their pressing numbers are among the best in Italy. And really that midfield, I think, solidified in the second half of the season. Benacer, comes back into form, I would say, once he gets back from AFCON. And that was pivotal. Tonali, I think, chipped in when he could and had some of his better performances, I would say, in a Milan shirt. So, yeah, tons of credit for them. We're going to move on to the rest of Italy. Congratulations to Milan. Congratulations to you, Dom. It was a fantastic win. They took over Sassuolo, by the way. I think there was 17,000 Milan fans in a 24,000 capacity stadium.
Crazy.
You would not have known that was an away match, honestly, which is great. I mean, it just speaks obviously to.
I have one question for you.
One question.
Now, I saw this on Twitter. I wanted to hear your take. Does this Scudetto? This is kind of a slapstick like reaction, but do you think that this kind of boosts Pioli into the upper echelon of Italian managers?
I think it has to. Anytime you win a title, I think no matter what, you have to be considered one of the top, managers in your league or, your nationality. You think of all the great Italian managers currently managing. There's, Conte, Allegri, and I would say Gasperini is not quite in that tier, but, he's I
Ancelotti?
think, Ancelotti, yeah, of course. So really it's Allegri, Ancelotti, and Conte, I'd say, in that top tier, which I mean, it's rarefied air. I think those are some of the best managers doing it right now. But I don't know that he's quite necessarily in that tier, but he's certainly differentiated himself from say Gasperini, right? Where he has a tangible thing to point to, like this is what I've won, and I think the circumstance he won it in too is really fantastic. So yeah, it has to elevate you. I think anytime you win a league, it has to. I think his stock was already rising when you consider last season's performance, and even if they hadn't won the title, I would say this puts him in a much bigger position, but I'm not quite sure he's in that top tier yet, because all those, managers have won not just, a league, they've won multiple, Ancelotti, in every league you can essentially, and, some European success there. So that's where it has to come now.
Conte doesn't have a Champions League, does he?
Neither Conte or Allegri do. But, obviously Ancelotti makes up for that.
He has two.
He is.
Oh wait, no, he has more than two.
Yeah, he is.
I'm thinking of only with Milan.
I was gonna say
he has more than that.
That's quite the insult to Ancelotti that he just has two. He could have more this Saturday if he plays his cards right. But yeah, I think it has to elevate him for sure. Elsewhere in Italy, Ciro Immobile, top scorer, 27 goals. He's going to go down, I think, as one of the best of his generation. And he's just a fantastic scorer in the domestic league, and we'll look back, I think, with a little I think we'll look back a little better on Immobile's career than we see it now. I think he's one of those players that you look back and think, wow, what a guy. I know that sometimes, the penalties can inflate it a little bit, but you have to convert them still. Vlahovic was close. He had 24 goals. Lautaro Martinez with 21. Martinez had definitely a better second half of the season. I'm interested to see how he gets on next year. Atalanta, no Europe since Gasperini arrived in 2016. They finished in 8th spot. They had a chance. They lost to Empoli 1-0, an Empoli team that frankly had nothing to play for. That's concerning. Atalanta, it's a tough year for them. And, obviously, historically, this is a good spot for them still, but we've gotten, I think, a little spoiled in the last 5-6 years where they've been with Gasperini and this new project where they were a team that was perennially finishing in the top 5, top 6, and we're involved in the Champions League, and had some big moments. Maybe next year will be a nice refresh for them. This was just a tough year for them, kind of the year from hell, honestly, in terms of injuries. They lost some key players at just bad times. Sold some players as well. I think it was just a little bit of a refresh. I'm looking forward to seeing how they get on next year. For me personally, I'd like to see them do a little bit better, but Lazio, Roma both find their way into Europa League, which is interesting, right? Lazio, just we talked about them all year as one of these Jekyll and Hyde teams, one of the worst defensive records in the top half of the table, yet scored a ton. Milinkovic-Savic, 11 goals, 11 assists in the league. That's outstanding. Such an interesting team. I'm looking forward to see what they do this summer. And Roma, they still have a lot to play for. They have the Conference League final, which I think, they're probably the favorites to win, but it's going to be a tough one. But they could be the first Italian team to win a European trophy since Inter in 2010. So that'd be nice.
I can't have that happen. First off, because all the Roma fans are talking about on Twitter that the Milan Scudetto is illegitimate. They paid the refs on their way to the title and this and that. And finally, like I said, I don't know how many episodes ago, we can finally post the before and after with Florenzi with the bonsai tree trophy and now Florenzi with the Scudetto. So listen, Florenzi has more Scudetti than Daniele De Rossi. Take that.
Yeah, but Daniele De Rossi has maybe one of the most ineffectual goals I've ever seen in that Manchester United knockout stages a few years ago. Well, I say a few years ago. It was a while ago now. But when they lost 6-1 away to Old Trafford, his goal is fantastic. It's one of the best goals I've ever seen. But
he also has a World Cup trophy, so
yeah, it's pretty nice. And he played some key parts there. This is from Giuseppe Pastore on Twitter. For the first time since 1968-69, Juventus ends the league without ever having won a game by more than 2 goals. That's insane. They did not win a single game by more than 2, not one. You'd think there'd be one time where they just kind of put the wheels on somebody, and it just never happened.
Especially with some of the players they have.
Right, this isn't necessarily the Juventus of old with no real good attacking options. They spent big on Vlahovic, and we'll see. I think Allegri's going to have some questions to answer. I've defended him quite a bit, but I have to say I've soured on him a little bit, especially in the second half of the season. Really, the last few weeks, I think I've watched this Juventus team and thought, I'm a little worried about them going. I think they'll probably still be a team that's considered for top 4, but I don't know that the bounce back is going to be as quick as maybe people expect it to be in terms of being title challengers. They have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I agree. Allegri does have a lot of work to do because if he can't turn this ship around in the next 3-4 years and at least get some type of trophy, Juventus fans are going to start sounding like Dallas Cowboys fans. Living in the past and talking all about their old trophies and how they used to run the league and no more. No.
We'll see. We'll give them another year of retooling before we start really laying into them. But yeah, Fiorentina back into Europe as well, which is good to see. They'll win the Conference League. You love to see that. Everything Vincenzo Italiano is doing there is fantastic, at least as far as. And this Salernitana survived, Dom. I was looking through some old articles. If you looked at Salernitana's chance of relegation, it was hovering. I'm talking a month and a half ago at 96% chance of being relegated. Davide Nicola, if you were in trouble, you call this man. In the Breaking Bad universe, you better call Saul. In this world, if you need to be safe from relegation and you are in the boot, you just need to call Nicola because he figures it out. I don't know what it is about this man, but he has just a habit of, even when they lost 4-0, they're still jumping around celebrating because they were safe. Cagliari just ineffectual, unable to score against Venezia. Definitely the easier of the matchups, but wasn't able to get it done. So Salernitana, for the first time too, they don't immediately go back down. They stay in Serie A for another season.
Love that.
Part of that too, it has to be owed to. They were pretty ambitious in the January transfer market, and it paid off for them because they're back. And I think it's a great sight. It's good to see them get rewarded for being ambitious. I'm looking forward to seeing them next year. It was a great story. I think just fantastic. Sucks for Cagliari, but you know what? It is what it is, right? I wonder what happens to João Pedro. I don't know. He seems maybe a little too good to be playing in Serie B, but we'll see.
He's been such a quality player for years. And it's kind of unfortunate that he's been wasting his career and his talent away with a club like that, where I've been waiting for him to make a step up to a bigger Italian club. I mean, maybe he ends up in with the Viola. Maybe he seems like the type of player to go play for a team like Fiorentina or like Atalanta or something like that. So
they did just buy Arthur Cabral as their Vlahovic replacement.
I don't know. He can play in behind. They could maybe play something like that.
It'd be interesting. I'd be curious to see if he ends up leaving. Top assistor in Serie A this season was Domenico Berardi, who had a fantastic year, by the way, by the numbers. Just really impressive all the way around. He was the goals and assists tied leader with Ciro Immobile. He had 29 goals and assists combined. Çalhanoğlu in second with 12, tied with Nico Barella with 12 as well. Really just strong season in Serie A. We're really excited so much because we had such a great title race. I'm hesitating going into the next segment here because this one hurt. This one, it's the hope that kills you in England, right? City back-to-back champions after it just is super exciting final day.
Crazy.
Not for me. I sweat through all the clothes that I was wearing, like I was playing the game. But there was a solid 10 minutes where it really was on the table for Liverpool to win the title. Where if they had scored, I would have believed it because City were 2-0 down in the 75th minute against Aston Villa. Liverpool were pressing. It seemed like a goal could come, and I started to believe, and that's when I knew. I was like, this is only going to end in pain. City turned it around in 5 minutes, score 3 goals to secure the title. And then there was like this fake roar that someone did in the crowd that made people believe in the announcers. And I said, there's no fucking way. I said, there's no way that Villa have made it 3-3. And of course, it wasn't true. Congrats to City, though. I mean, it's been their title to lose for some time now. We shouldn't forget that Liverpool were 14 points adrift of them in January and didn't lose a game in order to catch up all this ground, and just weren't able to get it over the line at the end of it. City, though, just clinical as always. This is what they do. This is why I felt that they were going to win it this entire time, because they know how to just get it done, when it matters in the league. And it was a great final day in terms of the title race. We haven't gotten that a lot in the past few years, in terms of it even going to the final day, really. And then the drama of it too, right? Anytime it has gone, it's felt like it's been pretty well decided early on, but there was a genuine chance there. And I think everyone enjoyed it. The neutrals enjoyed it. I think even Liverpool and City fans enjoyed it because there was that tension. City just love a dramatic final day. And it was on the anniversary of the Aguero goal, so you got a lot of that imagery. It sucks. As a Liverpool fan, it absolutely sucks to be on the other end of that. It's never good when you're on the other side of history. It hurts, but we're consoled at least by the fact that Liverpool have a Champions League final to look forward to. But it's another year though. You finish with 90 points and you're just a point behind. It sucks. There's no.
What else can you do?
There's no other way to put it. I mean, it's two of the best teams. I tweeted this, but it bears repeating. The top 10 point total lists in the Premier League era, 6 of those top 10 have come in the last 5 years between Liverpool and City. Should not lose sight of the fact that this is just shouldn't be happening. This is just a way above the standard from what we're used to. You usually get both of these seasons, right? Like a 93 and a 92 point season is normally something you'd see every so often, maybe every 7 or 8 years. You're getting that every year between these teams practically. And it's an insane level.
You didn't even see that kind of consistency between two teams, even in La Liga at the height of the Barca Real rivalry in the 2010s.
That's actually the only time it's been there was a season where I think Madrid finished on 100 points and still didn't win. That's, people won't like it, but that is the close, City and Liverpool are entering that category, and people will never want to have that discussion because you had Messi, Ronaldo, and that's always going to die. But in terms of actual dominance, you are getting close to that conversation. Really, truly, I think people need to understand that you're really breaking new ground here in terms of quality of team and just overall dominance. These two teams have won everything in England practically for the last 5 years. Outside of a few other teams, it's really just been these two. And then when you look at Europe, right? This is Liverpool's 3rd Champions League final in the last 5 years. City were in the final last year. Liverpool could win, their 2nd Champions League in that time frame. I don't think anyone would be shocked if you said City, or at least again in the semifinals of Champions League next year. They're a team that's always looking to be in the late stages. These two teams are spectacular, and they really are entering that Madrid Barca zone.
They're playing at a level where it's making fans joke. Yet it has an underlying tone of seriousness where they're calling the Premier League a farmers league just because these top 2 teams are just running away with everything and basically winning everything on the continent, in the country, all the time, right? Obviously the Prem isn't a farmers league, but the fact that no other team can keep up with the level that these two teams are playing at is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I saw
It
that.
just speaks volumes as to how good both of those teams are.
I saw this tweet. This is from Stephen Drennan. Without Liverpool, City would have won 5 titles in a row by 19 points, 12 points, 15 points, 26 points, 19 points. Those are like beyond like Bayern PSG numbers. Like it really would have been not close. And I think, again, I'm a Liverpool fan, so there's some bias, but I do think people haven't quite recognized not only just the dominance of these two teams, but without Liverpool, City would be waltzing to titles by March. Like that's how dominant they've been. We even saw a little bit of that last year when Liverpool fell off because of injuries. That it was just, you saw it in 17-18 where City were just so much better than everyone else. So I think, again, I think you should just enjoy the fact that we're watching what I think truly are the two best English teams ever. I don't really care about what people have to say about Arsenal and United. That was a great rivalry. I think in terms of quality, I don't know that there's any discussion to be had left about these teams and just their overall dominance and just how good they are. And there's no sign that this is stopping either for either of them. City are just bought Holland and you'd imagine are going to be even better. And there's nothing to me to suggest that Liverpool are going to fall off barring injury next year. So it sucks, but hope next season is better, from my perspective at least. But it was a great year, already having 2 trophies, still in a Champions League final, a lot to look forward to, and congratulations to City because at the end of the day they were the best team over 38 games, and that's how you win the title. And they are a special team for sure. Obviously some qualifiers in there, but they're true. What they do is just spectacular, and they're the one of the very few teams that could overturn a deficit like that in 5 minutes, and you're just not shocked at all. In fact, you're almost waiting for it. They're really just a fantastic team. But Spurs get top 4. They settle our top bins friendly bet, finishing above Arsenal. That feels nice, I gotta say. They absolutely dispatched Norwich on the final day, 5-0, to absolutely guarantee it. They'll be in the Champions League next year, which is big. I think that's a big step towards Conte staying. Kane certainly seems like he's staying now, to certainly beat off any interest for Heung-min Son and can make any big signings probably a little bit easier for them, right? If you have the offering of Champions League football to give to a new player. They're, I think, a really good center back and a good midfielder and maybe like a good like rotational attacker or maybe like a better fullback away from actually being like a team to watch out for. When you consider just how good they were under Antonio Conte, there's a great stat from ESPN FC. So before Antonio Conte, they had 5 wins and 5 losses. They were getting 1.5 points per game. They're scoring 0.9 goals per game, but allowing 1.6. After Antonio Conte, 17 wins, 5 draws, 6 losses, 2 points per game average, 2.1 goals per game average, and 0.9 goals against per game average. So every way you look at it, this team just performed so much better on Antonio Conte, and he deserves a lot of credit for how he turned around, and they deserve a lot of credit for being ambitious in January, right? Similar to Salernitana, right? Where they went out and made the big signings. They get Kulusevski, and they get Bentancur, and it paid off. Christian Romero also got healthy, which I think was huge for them in that second half of the season. He helped solidify that defense a lot, and they played great. They just played great down the stretch, and I think I'm not quite ready. I think some people have already very early on in their preview of next year have had them down as like title challengers. I think they're still signings away from that. They're going to have to make some improvements to the squad, and they're going to have to keep some players too, but I think this is a team that could take that leap. It's going to take some work. I don't know necessarily that they're quite in the Liverpool City tier yet. I think they're still more closer to like the Chelsea tier, but this is a team to look out for next season for sure. Then we do know, caveat, when Conte has had European games, it's not really a meme, it's just the facts. It hasn't actually worked out that well. He's typically a coach that works a lot better when he doesn't have those midweek games to worry about. But maybe that's something he works through next season. But I am looking forward to seeing it.
They're going to have to work on depth and squad rotation if they want that to happen with the way that Conte trains his players. I want to speak on the other end on the other side of the coin. Arsenal, with one of the youngest teams that they've ever fielded in their history, and also the youngest team in the Premier League this season. I think that it speaks volumes to the quality of players that they have and the project that they have going on right now under Arteta, that they did finish fifth. I mean, and that they were fighting for Champions League positions come the end of the season, with a team that was really kind of underestimated from the beginning of the season by a ton of basically everybody, unless you were an Arsenal fan and you're always like, we're winning the league. But I think that a lot of people just did not expect Arteta to have even this amount of success based off of how the season ended last year for Arsenal. So they have a great young core, Saka, Smith Rowe, Odegaard, Martinelli. If they make a couple quality signings and build on the project that they have, they have what it takes to work towards those top four spots. Obviously, I think that it's going to take a while to even get back to Tottenham's level, because Tottenham, I think, is just that level better than Arsenal solely off of experienced players. You're talking Heung-min Son, you're talking Harry Kane, you're talking, guys like that really just are that next level up. And then Chelsea, Liverpool, City, it's going to be very hard to get back to those levels for Arsenal. But, for what they have right now, finishing fifth, young squad, I think that, yes, you did finish below, your cross-city rival, but I don't think it's anything to hang their heads about. I think if you're an Arsenal fan, you're happy with kind of where you're at, and then make sure that your team moves forward in the summer transfer market the right way so that you can get back to the Champions League.
Yeah, so I'm really of two minds with this. And I was actually going through and listening just to of our shows from the beginning of the season, because we didn't really do and we'll do this for next year, but we didn't really do a prediction show. But, I was just trying to hear, how we thought about teams very early on in the season. And, it's easy to forget now, but Arsenal started out really terribly. They were 0-3 to start the season, and there was a game that they played against Norwich where both of them were 0-3, and it was like, who's gonna finish bottom of the league after this match week. So it's easy to forget that they started out just in a very terrible position, and that's the issue with me with Arteta and giving him a lot of credit, is we've seen this so much with his tenure that they have these peaks and valleys. And yes, part of that is definitely because they have a younger team, but you'd think, we're a few years into this project now where you would start to hope that you're actually reaping some of the results and rewards, and you just haven't quite yet. I do think if you had, it is progress on last season, tangibly so. And I do think if you had said Arsenal will finish fifth this season, I think most Arsenal fans would be happy with that. I think they would take that, and fairly so, as a sign of progress. I think it's always much worse though when you really did have Champions League in your own possession. All you really, you had so many opportunities, and it's not even just the Spurs game that you lost it in, right? There's some of those games in April that were very winnable that they probably should have done better in. But I'm still not totally convinced of Arteta, and I don't know. I think we've just seen a pattern now of where, for a month and a half they look great, and then a month and a half they look terrible and can't figure it out. And I wonder if that inconsistency is simply because they're a young team, or maybe Arteta just hasn't quite worked something out. I agree. It's going to be interesting to see how they navigate the summer now, but we'll see what they end up doing, because it's going to be fascinating. Yeah, youngest team in the Premier League this year, 24 years, 308-day average in the squad. So they are moving in a good direction in that respect. This was interesting. Liverpool were only top of the Premier League for 11 days when you consider, how good they were this year. City were top for 168 of those days, Chelsea for 70, United for 14, Spurs for 13, Liverpool with 11, West Ham for 6, and Brentford were top for a day. If we can remember, they beat Arsenal on opening day on that Friday. They were top of the league. So shout out to Brentford. Fantastic debut season in the Premier League, because they were top for one day, and that's what matters. Speaking of United, by the way, though, they conceded 57 goals this season. That's the most since 1978-79 for them. Pretty crap year, if we're being honest. Just narrowly avoided finishing in the Conference League, but they will be in Europa League next year, so they're at least in some European competition. But I think we all know that Erik ten Hag has a lot of work to do, and we'll be talking all summer about what that's going to look like, what that team is going to look like, and whether or not they're actually going to be good or not. This was also interesting. Chelsea were never losing at halftime at any point this season. that's just like that's an insane stat. To never go into halftime down is kind of crazy when you consider it's not like they were like a hugely dominant team. They were good this year, but to never be down like 1-0 is kind of insane when you consider it all. But
I think one of the stats that I enjoy seeing, if only the final 19 games of the season were counted as this season, Liverpool would have won. They would have beat City, who ended in second, by 6 points, and Newcastle would have been third with 38 points out of the final 19. Manchester United would have been eighth with 27 points. Chelsea with only 33 points. That's less than Arsenal, less than Tottenham Hotspur as well.
Yeah, that just highlights to me that Liverpool went on such an insane run. And anyone who talks about them, like the draw against Spurs, it's like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, literally did not drop a game like in the longest time. I mean, just went on an insane run. The only two non-wins were Spurs and City, two draws. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's just hard to do any better than that. It so is what rough, it is.
The other one that I want to give a shout out to is Daniel Chester's heat map and touch map from the only appearance that he had, which was in a 1-0 defeat to Liverpool at Anfield on March 5th. He played 3 minutes, 33 seconds and didn't record a single touch on the ball.
Shout out Danny Chester right there. Burnley, they're gone dumb. They are out of the Premier League. So long, farewell. Auf Wiedersehen, good night. Leeds, safe. Jesse Marsch gets to stay another year in the Premier League. Gotta say, I hate the Ted Lasso comments. That shows the worst thing I think that has ever happened in terms of like respect for American coaches abroad, because everyone just gets boiled down to and that he's just a Ted Lasso. I wish people were more appreciative of the fact that in his very short stint with Leeds, he won 4 games. Bielsa won only 5 in the entire season that he was there. And that the reason they were in so much trouble is because Bielsa was regularly conceding 5 and 6, 7 goals. Jesse Marsch put a stop to a lot of that. I don't love Jesse Marsch. But I think he deserves a lot more credit than he's getting. I think if he was an English manager, if Frank Lampard went to Leeds and did what he did, people would have already been like plotting for him to be the England manager, after this World Cup for Gareth Southgate. Like that I think is kind of the scale of what they did, when you consider just I think how good he was. I think he deserves a lot more credit. I wish people I don't get it at all, frankly. I think Jesse Marsch did a very good job at Leeds. I'm looking forward to seeing them back in the Premier League. Burnley, let's be honest, I think we've all had games where we watch our teams play Burnley and we're just so frustrated and the physicality of it. And I don't ever call a team dirty, but they certainly practice the dark arts quite a bit, that team. And it is interesting, right, though, because they don't have the greatest financial structure at the moment. So this could be a team, unfortunately, that doesn't bounce quite back up. We've seen this with some of these Premier League teams that go down. We see them back either the next season or within a few years. You're seeing Bournemouth and Fulham come back up, Fulham right back up. Huddersfield is in the championship playoffs, so they could be back up after a few years, down level. I don't know that you're necessarily going to see that with Burnley. They also have 9 players out of contract, kind of similar to Crystal Palace last year in terms of future's a little murky for them right now. Mike Jackson technically isn't even like their permanent manager, so some question marks for me there in terms of what they do. But it was a great Premier League season, just a fantastic one. Plenty of action. I think the final day was one of the best final days that we've had because not only did you have the title race, but you had, even top 4 was at least a question mark. Relegation was a question mark going into the day. There was still plenty of storylines to be had. Heung-min Son and Mo Salah split the Golden Boot. I don't feel strongly about this. Some people do, about like settling it in some way, so that just one player walks away with it.
Stupid.
I get the idea. It's an individual award. It should go to an individual, but I don't know. Like, how do you actually separate the two exactly? I just think it's a little hard. Mo Salah did have the most assists in this league as well. He had 13, 36 combined goal and assist contributions. Cristiano Ronaldo finished with 18 goals. I'm just going to say we picked that number almost exactly. He had 18 goals in the league. He had 24 in all competitions. We were just a little off in our prediction when we talked about Harry Kane. Cristiano Ronaldo. Harry Kane had a great second half of the season. He only had one Premier League goal in December. Finished the season with 17. He had a great second stretch. Youngmin Son deserves a lot of credit. 23 goals, none of them from penalties. Really just well-balanced player, too. Can score him with the right or the left. He's a fantastic guy to watch. And he had a really, really strong second half of the season. I think a lot of teams in the Premier League should be worried about his form going into next season, because if he can play like that, for the whole year, and you get Harry Kane at that level, that's scary. That's a scary, scary thought. And Conte has gotten the best out of some attacking players. For, I think, a manager that has a more defensive kind of reputation, he's had some attacking players have some very, very good seasons with him. So we're gonna move past the domestic leagues now. We'll have like team of the season stuff next week and some of our player of the year kind of awards and all that. But there's still some things to preview, still some things to review as well, like the Europa League final. Frankfurt won this fantastic final. Physical in some ways. It was definitely punishing for the players because it was a very hot day in Seville. But Frankfurt ended up winning on penalties. Some of the best penalties I've ever seen, too, by the way. Just dispatching them beautifully. And when you consider just the stakes and the fact that it's a major European final, they took it very, very well. So congrats to Eintracht Frankfurt for that one.
Not only are they the same color as my favorite team, but two former Milan players won a European trophy that night. So I'm taking that as a dub.
It was a sign of good fortune, I think, for Milan.
It's an honorary dub for me.
Yeah, we'll take that. We'll take it however it comes, I guess. Conference League final, we've got Feyenoord versus Roma on Wednesday. This is a good one. I'm really looking forward to this. It's the first Conference League final as well. It's the inaugural season. Dom is crossing his fingers, hoping that Feyenoord are able to be the first team to win all three major European trophies on offer. Mourinho could be the first manager to do it. So either way, you'll have someone walking away from this claiming that this is the biggest European trophy you could win, and that by winning all three, they're the most accomplished European either team or manager. I'm looking forward to it, though. I think Roma have the edge in this. They finished the season pretty strongly, and Tammy Abraham had a great year. I think Roma have the edge, but with a final, it can go either way. Speaking of going either way, we do have the Champions League final this Saturday, Liverpool versus Real Madrid. Thiago did get injured in the final game of the season for Liverpool. He's apparently kind of a race against time here to get healthy. It's an Achilles issue, so we'll see. He just kind of has to respond to treatment, it seems, this week. But Dom, I mean, it's a replay of the 2018 final, which is one of my least favorite games of all time, as most people would expect. Never felt so upset by anything in my life. But Real Madrid have had Liverpool's number. They knocked them out of the Champions League, of course, last season, and then obviously beat them in that final, beat them in the group stage when they played in the 14-15 season. So they've gotten one over on Liverpool quite a bit recently. And Karim Benzema, of course, is going to be one of the headliners in this. He's had such a strong season and is in great goal scoring form. You have to imagine he's going to get involved in some way in this game. That's just his habit. But it's going to be a great game. I think it's two of the best teams I think we could have gotten. Obviously, I think some people would have wanted Liverpool City just for that extra little bit of rivalry and the fact that these teams are seem like two of the better teams in Europe. But I think Liverpool-Madrid is a fantastic final in terms of, especially for the neutral fan, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of history, a lot of bad taste left in Liverpool's mouth from these past games with Real. So, in my head, I'm thinking that they go out with that extra fire underneath all of them and go out and win this game. But it's going to be very tough. Real has just been having so many players in form. You mentioned Benzema, who's been playing at a Ballon d'Or type level right now. Modric just does not seem to show any signs of aging. He is still arguably the best midfielder in that league and one of the best midfielders in the world. Vinicius Jr. has been having a wonderful breakout. I don't want to say breakout, but he's really taken a step forward with Madrid this year. Even Rodrigo, he's been scoring some big goals at the right times. Kind of like what you mentioned about Giroud. It's not the quantity, it's the quality of some of the goals. They're really only still alive because of him anyway. So, and that's not to discredit any of the other players on Madrid that are in the lineup, but some of these players I mentioned, these guys are the cogs that make this whole thing keep going for Madrid. And the way that they're playing, These guys have been at this stage before. These guys have won the trophy before. These guys have really played at a high level for a long time, and it's Real Madrid. So that they're always going to come ready to go and with a lot of expectations on their end. So it's going to be a crazy game. Make sure that you watch this live. Do not miss this game because it's going to be one hell of a match to watch.
Yeah, it's crazy too because we've talked about Madrid so much in their run up to the Champions League here, and what we've said about them is so true, and it's hard because I try not to do the cliches and try and look for as much of can you back this up with stats or at least some kind of positional awareness, right? Like something, right? But there is something about this Madrid team that has just been special, and they've just honestly you can make the case that they probably should have lost every knockout tie that they were in. That they were over the course of the entire time are probably pretty well beaten, but yet they just found ways to win still, which it's just a mark of this team. And you can look back to some of those other Champions League runs that they've had, and it's been kind of a similar story. Whatever it is about this team, they have ways of figuring it out in the moment, and that's so dangerous because you get to these high pressure situations, and you're right to point out that the core of this team has been through a lot of those Champions League nights and knows what it's like to just navigate, just the stress of a final and the fact that usually no one's going to play, a 10 out of 10 in a final, right? It's a hard situation to come into because especially no one wants to lose it, right? So there's so much more defensive, positioning, right? And I think this Madrid team are very scary, but Liverpool have to be considered it too. I think Liverpool are technically even the favorites for this one. Everything you say about Madrid as well, I think you could actually say the same about Liverpool. Let's not forget they won the Champions League trophy in 2019. They've been a team that this is their third final in 5 years, and the core of this team has been through all of those as well. They are also very experienced, have been in these big moments. They've already won 2 finals this year. They have navigated some very, very tough spots. This is going to be a huge challenge for them, though, especially when you consider just the schedule that they've had. This is going to be the longest break that they've had in months, which could do them some good. But it's a huge, huge test. I'm looking forward to it. I'm nervous as hell already, but I can't wait because, listen, you want your teams in the big finals. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great one. And yeah, I mean, you're right to point out too. It's a final steeped in history. This could be Madrid's 14th Champions League victory, and this could be Liverpool's 7th. So I think it has to be, prior to them meeting previously, it has to be the highest number of trophies meeting in a final, I would have to imagine. Real Madrid are 7-0 in Champions League finals, though. So, something is either going to continue or change dramatically. I hope that we can turn that to 7-1, but we'll have to see. Dom, that's it. That's all we have for the show today. We'll be back next week, and we'll be talking about who won that Champions League final. We'll know who won the Conference League final. We'll also know the final team getting promoted to the Premier League. Nottingham Forest, Huddersfield play on the 29th, and we'll see who that third team is going up. And we'll be back with team of the season stuff, player of the season, all that kind of end of the year goodness. Anything to say before we get out of here, Dom?
Forza Milan. Right.
Totally reasonable.
Pioli is on fire. Forza lotta, vincerai, non ti lasceranno mai. All right. Follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/harry8, at Watch Lifestyle on Twitter. Come hang out. Say what's up. We play FIFA every night. So let's get it.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw. I'm sure you did. Pioli celebrating with the fans in the 84th minute. He's doing the little fist pumps in the air, getting
Pioli is on fire.
It was good to see. Yeah, we'll be back. Maybe Champions Podcast Part 2 next week. Who knows? Either way, we'll have lots to discuss and talk about and analyze. And we'll be back in the summer too. Don't forget, of course, to talk about transfers and start previewing next season. Because I'll tell you, the grind never stops. The offseason moves quick, my friends. Before you know, we're going to be back in July. The players are going to be back. We'll have transfers to talk about, all that goodness. So keep it locked in here for all that news. But until then, we'll talk to you next time.